When terrorists from the self-described Islamic State beheaded American journalist James Foley, the media struggled with how much gruesome detail to show and what tone to strike. Now the execution of journalist Steven Sotloff has raised those questions again, with the press still unsure which approach is right. WGBH News reporter Adam Riley has more.
After James Foley was murdered by ISIS, images from the moments before his horrific death proliferated, from the cover of the New York Post to the top of the network newscasts.
The victim was freelance journalist James Foley.
But on Twitter, journalists and others argued against disseminating those images, saying that's exactly what ISIS wants. Now, tragically, that debate is continuing.
And we are sorry to tell you that it apparently has happened again.
After a new ISIS video showed the beheading of American journalist Steven Sotloff, Al Jazeera announced, "We respect Steven and won't air images of his death or him in a jumpsuit. We suggest all media do the same." And CBS proudly touted its restraint.
ISIS would like us to show you the most graphic images on that video as part of their campaign of terror. We will not.
Still, CBS showed plenty.
I'm back, Obama, and I'm back because of your arrogant foreign policy towards the Islamic State.
ABC was more cautious, using stills instead of video balanced with images from Sotloff's life. Meanwhile, this small image inside the New York Times drew a rebuke from Ombudsman Margaret Sullivan, who said not using anything at all from this despicable video would have been even better. That is debatable, because if these images help ISIS get its message out, they also show how vicious they are.
So are news organizations giving too much publicity to terrorist propaganda? Adam Riley joins me now, along with author and journalist Roy Harris, Kelly Crossley of WGBH News, and Dan Kennedy of Northeastern University. Well, with all due respect to Margaret Sullivan, I think she's wrong about this. I don't know what your take on this. Those were the images, and for the New York Times to put it, what was her issue? That it was too small? That it was
no,
too
she
graphic?
Just didn't want it used at all.
Just didn't want it used at all.
Yeah.
I mean, it's part of the story.
I actually think, we use these images to do our story today. I know earlier in the week when you were talking about Sotloff's death, I think we used here at Greater Boston some of the video, which I was a little unsure about when I saw that piece. I think the problem with using these images, in particular the video images again and again, is ISIS is very good at packaging what they're doing and packaging it for an international audience in a way that's going to help them, gain recruits, gain momentum. And the more executions like this happen, I think the less and less we need to show exactly what they're doing. It's almost like, it's so highly stylized, it's so produced. We know what happens. I think that, if there's a third person executor, hopefully there won't be, the thing to do would be just use stills. We know their MO, we know what they're doing. I don't think we need to go back to the video well after this.
Well, it's amazing, of course, you think back that this, unfortunately, is not a new story. We think back to 2002 and Danny Pearl, and the questions came up then about the beheading, which had pictures as well. I think the decisions, a lot of the decisions were made at the time. I was so shocked by the New York Post page. It seemed to me maybe that had something to do with Margaret Sullivan's. Maybe she was reacting to it the other way. But it is a story that we're going to keep seeing. If it's not that, it'll be something else. How many times have we talked on this show about, people falling out of buildings, and at what point do you save the reader from viewing that?
But those aren't staged events. If someone falls out, if there's a horrific casualty on the battlefield, that's just happened organically. But this is done so that we can see it.
But it seems to me that the newspapers and TV really are pretty good at packaging too, and they definitely should be viewing this from their own standpoint about what the audience deserves to have. And that's where I would stand with Margaret Sullivan on that. Back away from anything that looks like it's packaged.
Well, it's accessible wherever, It doesn't have to be in a newspaper, it doesn't have to be on TV, it's accessible. So I'd rather have somebody who knows what they're doing present it to me.
Well, see, that's where I get, maybe you tell people it's accessible and you go find it if you want to, but we don't necessarily have to put it out here. My concern is that what happens now is that it just becomes wallpaper. That was a concern of the people falling out of the building during 9/11. That was a concern of certain images from Oklahoma, which is why in certain situations, people were able to privatize those images and say, you may not use them without express permission from X or Y or Z, to just shut that down. And so here we sort of have either viral wallpaper or judicious use by people who know what they're doing. But I think there's all this room in between. So the best I can hope for right now is just to have some taste. For my money, the moment right before just seemed unnecessary. If you got to tell the story, absolutely. Let's tell the story. Maybe we see him in the orange jumpsuit, but the moment right before, to your point about the New York Post, that, to me, I don't get. What information am I gaining from that? I don't know.
And remember the family, too.
Exactly.
Remember the family.
Yeah.
I think it's important that we bear witness to this type of evil and depravity, and so I really don't have any problem with the media circulating these images so that we do really understand what the Islamic State is all about. But I do think there has to be an element of viewer beware. And that's where the New York Post really crossed the line, because it was on the front page. It wasn't like, go to our website if you don't mind seeing a really graphic image. Instead, it was on newsstands everywhere, and you couldn't help but see it. And I think that was a real mistake.
How do you guys feel about the audio? Should we be listening to them and their propaganda and why their rationale, and obviously the forced speeches from both Sotloff and Foley?
Well, I thought the propaganda was just so basically insane that it was interesting to listen to, that it gives you some insight into their mentality. And it certainly isn't going to make any converts in the West. I mean, it may among certain disturbed individuals, but for the most part, it's not.
But, letting the executioner swagger, calling out the president and sticking his knife at the president, I don't know, again, what illumination that provides that we wouldn't get if, say, that was paraphrased by a reporter, or if a reporter read what was said as opposed to
they were listening to him, and they'd be able to identify him. I mean, I don't know. We can just sanitize it so far.
I'd like to see it in context, and of course, when it's out there becoming wallpaper, it loses all context. There is no context. So that's my concern. I mean, I think you can play the audio, and maybe you should play the audio and have some contextual information. What I fear is that nobody pays attention to the contextual information.
Well, and you do get desensitized when it's wallpaper. It's amazing.
Well, I don't think too many people use that as wallpaper.
Well, but even just watching it in the context
those people dropping out of the windows, they use it over and over.
No, that was cut off right away.
No, it was not. Let's go back and check that. It was not. It went forever, to the point that they had to say, you can't use these images. I remember that. And the same thing with Oklahoma.
Same thing with the Boston Marathon
bombings.
You see it again and again, and what used to hit you in the gut just doesn't hit you the same way.
The planes, but not the people.